Hello and welcome to the Champions League podcast from sportsbet.io. My name is Pete Farries. The man in the other box is called Rob Daly. He's our football expert and we're going to be talking through this week's Champions League action. This is the Tuesday pod. There will be a Wednesday podcast available as well. Rob, hello for a start. Secondly, I'll remember my manners. And secondly, Rob, this first round of fixtures, before we get into the second, it's safe to say there was quite a lot of goals.
Hello, Pete. Yes, there were loads of goals. It was a really, because it was spread over 3 nights. I felt that there was so much Champions League football. You also had these 2 kickoff slots, which has been the case for a while. You know, the 5:45 and the 8 p.m. UK time. It was really enjoyable. I think the one thing is, like, in a narrative sense, it's less easy to get a grip on what's happening in terms of what does this mean for the status of the league phase as opposed to a group stage. So, say in the case of City drawing with Inter at home. Not a bad result, not a great result for City, I'd argue. But I have no idea in the league phase whether it's a good or bad result because there's so much to play. They're playing 7 different teams. You know, it's hard to actually necessarily remember who everybody's playing. Please don't ask me that on the show because I will not remember. I think as it develops, we'll start to understand what points are needed, what people's ambitions are. But I think having this kind of high jeopardy top 8 straight into the round of 16 thing is good. It really is like a very attractive thing to aim for. And I think teams are going to go for it early in this league phase to try and get as many points on the board. And I mean, I think there won't be much rotation really in this competition with the strong teams.
I think it's not with the strong teams. I think it's quite interesting that I think we'll come down to the last round of fixtures. And there'll be teams who are quite far down, 30, 29th, let's say, in the table, who still have a pretty solid chance of getting into those playoff spots. I think that the top bracket will be decided relatively simply. I think that middle bracket, you are going to have, I think, a few teams late on who have the ability to charge in with one last win or last point. I think that is where, I mean, obviously, the first round of fixtures we don't know, but that's where my focus might be as this tournament progresses. That some of those weaker teams who aren't in the top, 16 or whatever it is, I think they have a half chance of jumping in very late in the competition.
Well, who knows? Is 8 points going to be enough? Is 9 points going to get you in that top 24? We don't know yet. And I think that's why for teams like Celtic that got off to, and we're going to talk about them, that winning start on Matchday 1 was so crucial. So look, I think it has opened up to the smaller teams a little bit, and the smaller clubs that haven't managed to get through the Celtic, obviously a massive club, but the teams that have not been able to get through the group stage of the Champions League, it opens it up to New Year football. And for people who are not aware, Match Day 8, so the final day of fixtures in the league phase, all the games are simultaneous kickoffs. So we've got 18 matches all at once. You'll have a live league table where teams are going up and down and qualifying, not qualifying. So that's going to be really exciting as well as really confusing.
And also, we haven't told Rob this yet, but we're going to do one podcast per game for that last round.
A 4 weeks worth of work.
4 weeks worth of work. You do book that out now. Right, let's move on to the actual games this week. Slovan Bratislava hosting Manchester City. This is, in terms of the betting and probably in terms of how the matches look, the most one-sided affair of the week. 1.06 Manchester City at the time of recording to get the win. But Man City, this is a bit of a strange thing to say, could do with a win, Rob.
Yeah, obviously they've had a couple of domestic draws. The one against Arsenal, which felt like a good result given the situation they got themselves into the closing stages of the game. Less so at Newcastle at the weekend, having led at St James's Park and drawing 1-1. I spoke about rotation and my scepticism about big teams rotating. I suspect City will. Especially given, and we'll get onto Bratislava in a minute, and the way they performed in their opening game against Celtic. But the injury issues are so severe right now for Manchester City. You know, Kevin De Bruyne, Nathan Ake, Oscar Bob injured before the season started, I think, or right at the start of the season. And now Rodri, of course, being the crucial one. So Pep has a small first-team squad anyway. So to what extent can he rotate? They play Fulham at home on Saturday, 5 days rest. I think he'll have to go relatively strong. He's already spoken about effectively throwing away the Carabao Cup. They play Spurs in the next round, and he said, I'm going to announce now, he said this before the draw, I will play a team who have not played, I'll play a team that's played the least minutes, a second team, we're not going to waste energy on this competition. His words verbatim. Yeah. Verbatim. So, look, I think he's got to be looking at this game, given that they drew with Inter as well, as a big one. and one where they'll have to get a win. So will he rotate? I don't know if he'll do too much. And to be honest, does he have many options?
The truth is, though, I suppose, even with the rotation at Manchester City, there is some real quality in those younger players. And can Slovan Bratislava stop them after what we saw them do against Celtic?
No way. The problem with the Bratislava had at Celtic, and they lost 5-1, it wasn't just that they lost 5-1. And let's remember, they came through 4 qualifying rounds, did brilliantly to reach the league phase. They're well rested as well. They played on Friday, won in the Slovakian league. It was the frequency with which Celtic carved them open. Like 5-1, they were lucky to get away with a 5-1. They scored a brilliant goal through Kevin Wimmer, but it could have been many more. Celtic actually at times, I think you could argue, were wasteful in front of goal, given how well they were carved open. So look, I agree, no matter what team City play, they'll be incisive. They'll cut Slovan Bratislava open, and fully expecting a Manchester City victory in that one on Tuesday.
Yeah, maybe look towards the handicap markets or your goal scorer markets in that one. Now let's head to Germany. Bayer Leverkusen hosting Milan, who'd started the season a little bit oddly under Paulo Fonseca. They then get a big win in the Milanese derby and followed it up with a pretty simple 3-0 win over Lecce, although me and Rob would give Lecce a pretty solid game. Bayer Leverkusen, of course, involved Rob in that cracker in Germany at the weekend, the 1-1 draw at Bayern.
Yeah, a brilliant game. I think Xabi Alonso will be delighted with the result, not only because it's a 1-1 draw away at Bayern, their biggest title rivals, not to lose that match, but also because Bayern had a frequency of chance in the second half especially that meant that Leverkusen probably should have lost the game. There's some heroic defending, wasteful finishing, great goalkeeping, all in there.
Yeah.
Sure, even when Robert Andrich fired in that opening goal around the half-hour mark, that was Leverkusen's first attempt. Their first attempt on goal, Alexander Pavlovic with that stunning equaliser. It's a credit to Leverkusen defensively because we think of them as an attacking team. And sure enough, the week before, I don't know what you were saying, I forget how you phrased it previously, but did a Leverkusen. They did it again against Wolfsburg after beating Feyenoord, where they were 3-2 down, 1-4-3, Victor Boniface in the 93rd minute with the winner. Classic kind of Leverkusen shenanigans. But I think the last 2 results have been good for them. They were outstanding, by the way, Pete, at Feyenoord. I mean, they were really, really good. No matter what state Feyenoord are in, and they lost Arne Slot in the summer, etc., etc. But Der Kuip can be a ferocious place to go to. And the atmosphere, you can get whipped of it. Leverkusen didn't. They were killers. And with 3-0 up at half-time, Florian Wirtz outstanding. They won 4-0. Wirtz is in great form. He didn't score at the weekend, but 6 goals in 8 games so far this season. So, look, what a stern test for AC Milan because Leverkusen, again, look, I know they've lost their unbeaten league record, but look really sharp.
It's the thing about the unbeaten league record when they lost late to Leipzig is kind of what's impressed me the most since then, in that they've had really no problems. They lost that game and then battered Hoffenheim very comfortably. As you said, went to Feyenoord, won 4-0. They get their goal against Wolfsburg late on to win 4-3, and they get a brilliant draw at Bayern. So that, to me, is actually the more impressive thing. You finally lose that record, and you immediately go, don't care, let's crack on. And then
it's a great point, Pete. Yeah, great point. Because
3 games, it's amazing.
Yeah, and you couldn't have known, last season would have been a reference point because they only lost the very last game of the season. To see what do this team do when they have a setback? And obviously they lost the Europa League final to Atalanta, and then we didn't see them again. And then sure enough, even in the Community Shield equivalent at the start of the season in Germany, they did their Leverkusen stuff again. So they're just doing the same thing. So yes, they lost to Leipzig, but still a ferocious opponent for Milan.
Whatever I said about Leverkusen, I prefer the phrase that Rob used, which is Leverkusen shenanigans, which I just think is a good phrase to use, to be honest. Milan, just a quick word on Milan. There is maybe starting to be a bit more of a settled side. They have got a few injuries still in that squad, but Milan is starting to improve. I prefer Bayer in this game, if I'm absolutely honest, to win it. But I think Milan is now finally getting to a point where you go, maybe they're settling a bit.
Well, encouraging results in the league. So, as you mentioned, they beat Inter, late goal, Matteo Gabbia, 89th minute. Brilliant results away in inverted commas, to Inter, before beating Lecce on Friday. I was very disappointed with them against Liverpool. I commentated on their 3-1 defeat to the Reds. Flying start, San Siro rocking, ahead in 3 minutes. Yeah. Christian Pulisic. It looked like Liverpool were kind of caught up in the atmosphere of the Giuseppe Meazza, but then just established complete control. And Milan just looked a complete level down. maybe 2 levels down compared to Liverpool. They do have a lot of guys who've been kind of cast off by top 6 Premier League teams. There's about 5 from Chelsea in that Milan team. And, I'll point to the way that Liverpool played at San Siro. So aggressive with the press, so high energy, high line, which Milan tried to exploit and nearly did, but couldn't quite get those passes right because of the suffocating nature of Liverpool's press. Leverkusen will do the same. Yeah. Leverkusen will play in a very, very similar way. They'll be patient in the build-up like Liverpool, but be absolutely brutal when Milan try to play out. And that's why my heart as well is going with Bayer Leverkusen for this one.
Yeah. 1.7 at the time of recording. I think that's probably a bit of a fair price, to be absolutely honest with you. Right, let's stay in Germany as we head to Borussia Dortmund. Their game is a really intriguing one, taking on Celtic. Borussia Dortmund, Rob, there were a few rumours behind the scenes about unhappy players, some stubbornness from Nuri Sahin, perhaps. Ultimately, they're looking very good. However, we mentioned Celtic a moment or two ago. In the league, they've scored 20 and conceded none. Now, with all due respect, this is the Scottish Premier League, but Premiership, but they have been extraordinary. Furuhashi in amazing form. Big fan of Kyogo Furuhashi. This is a really fascinating game. If I had to look through sort of Tuesday and Wednesday, this would be towards the games I'm most interested in.
It'll be exceptional. I mean, Celtic are playing. I mean, I was reading some stuff from Celtic fans yesterday about how they're playing their best free-flowing football in quite some time. And obviously there was a little bit of adjustment period to Brendan Rodgers' return last season. But my word, I mean, it's 16 goals in the last 3 games, including the win over Slovan Bratislava. Furuhashi got a couple at the weekend as they beat St Johnstone 6-0. So they're looking really good. They know this is a stern test. Dortmund were runners-up last season, but we know the extent to which things have changed at Borussia Dortmund. I mean, I was reading a quote as well, and in terms of the opportunity here for Celtic, Pete, I was reading words from Didier Mann, who's a big pundit out in Germany, obviously former Germany international, Bayern, Liverpool, etc., who is extremely critical of what Dortmund are doing defensively right now and the way they're playing out from the back under Nuri Sahin. He says they appear to be all over the place in defence. There's no organisation in their defending and no one seems in control. I get nervous watching them. Is there an opportunity for Celtic? It's a big ask to go there and win Dortmund's first Champions League game of the season. But maybe Dortmund in this adjustment period to a new manager, maybe there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Dortmund bounced back after being absolutely leathered by Stuttgart a couple of weeks ago, won against Bochum. But with all due respect, I know that's a local game, Dortmund-Bochum, and you could add all kinds of caveats in with that. But ultimately, I think Bochum, we're never going to win that game. They're never good on the road, even if it's only 20, 30 kilometres up the road. Dortmund were much better. Celtic, I've been really impressed by, and it's quite interesting because they're going to win the Scottish Premiership, right? I don't want to be boring, but they're going to win the Scottish Premiership. So all of a sudden, Brendan Rodgers can just put so much more energy into this, particularly if he's seen his team play in the way they're currently playing. I honestly think this game is absolutely fascinating. I cannot wait for this one. I mean, I was looking at the betting earlier on, and Dortmund are heavy favourites in this, but I don't know that they should be heavy favourites. They're 1.39 at the time of recording. I'm not sure I'd back that because this game's going to have loads of goals in it at least.
Yeah, and Dortmund do look a little bit sloppy at the back. They did, especially for the second goal. Bochum went 2-0 up at the weekend. Yeah. And again, your heart tells you that Dortmund will come back and win the game, and sure enough, they did. But there will be opportunities. It's about taking them. I think, I know they won 5-1 against Slovan Bratislava, but I think that scoreline could have been, the margin by which they won could have been greater.
Yeah, like a Bayern-style thing, yeah.
Yeah, like Bayern won on Matchday 1. So if they're a bit more ruthless, I think they'll get their chances at Dortmund. Look, Dortmund as well, by the way, it's worth mentioning, did have a good first game on Matchday 1. They needed the goals late. They all came in the final 15 minutes. Yeah. Jamie Gittens scoring 2 of them away at Club Brugge. Sekou Guirassy, it's worth mentioning as well, is back amongst the goals. Having come back from his injury, his first season at Dortmund, he scored at his old club Stuttgart recently. So he's looking like their proper number 9. There's also a nice sort of subplot. I don't think this affects the betting so much, but that Nuri Sahin was signed by Brendan Rodgers in 2012 for Liverpool on loan from Real Madrid. A famously disastrous loan. Sahin looks back on the fact he wore a Liverpool shirt fondly, but it was extremely critical of the way Brendan Rodgers tried to use him as an attacking midfielder in his Liverpool team. So I'm sure the handshake will be nice and pleasant, but something for people like me, commentators, to get stuck into a little bit.
That's a gift. That's an absolute gift for a commentator, that kind of thing. I think he even used him once just off the striker, didn't he? If I remember rightly, like he was literally.
That was the very problem. I mean, Shahin hated it. He wasn't that kind of player. So
No.
yeah, but he's trying to establish himself as a manager. And at Dortmund, there's always rumblings of discontent. It's a very leaky dressing room. So no surprise that even the slightest upset at Nuri Sahin's methods is making the press.
And we'll move on to the last game of the week, which is Arsenal as they take on PSG. Another pretty tasty-looking tie on the face of it. Arsenal's last 2 league games have been interesting. Is probably to undersell it a little bit. They had the 2-2 draw against Manchester City, and of course that weekend game against Leicester was mad. They'll be a little bit disappointed drawing away at Atalanta on match day 1, Rob. This game's fascinating. Do we back them to bounce right back?
Well, I think we'll get on to PSG in a minute. I think their injury issues is a factor in this game. I really do. And I think fundamentally, Mikel Arteta, even the draw at Atalanta, which required that brilliant David Raya double save, from the penalty kick.
Yeah.
I think Mikel Arteta will be fundamentally very happy with how things are going. I mean, I was looking at their start to the season. It featured 3 of their 4 toughest away days. Villa, City and Spurs, not counting Liverpool in that group. And they got 7 points from that. They have 14 points from their opening 6 games. They nearly chucked it away at the weekend against Leicester. We could go on about the City game for a lifetime, that 2-2 draw conceding so late. But, they nearly chucked away that Leicester game. But the thing with Arsenal is you just always, I was commentating on that game of the weekend, you just knew.
Yeah.
You just know that the pressure is relentless. And I think what impressed me about that game of the weekend, it's the kind of game where they need Odegaard to bail them out, do something, his vision, his desire to get the ball and make something happen. They did it without him. They managed to get the result without him. They've got injury issues as well. Ben White missed the weekend. Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, they've all been out. I think Tomiyasu's close. But there are rumours that Calafiori picked up a knee injury in that game. He was excellent at left back. So some potential concerns. I think Mikel Moreno might be close to coming back as well from his shoulder problem, which is good news because Arsenal, like City, have actually got quite a small squad. So I still think Arsenal in good shape to go and get a result. And Ethan Nwaneri, who came off the bench, my word, 17 years old, suddenly became the best player on the pitch when he came on. So I don't think it's impossible that he starts, that Arteta makes a big call.
Well, on Matchday 1's podcast, I mispronounced that name absolutely appallingly, and you can see.
No, I don't know if I might have done there, and I might have done on that one. So I've been meaning to check the definitive Nwaneri. I need to double check that one.
And just a very quick word on PSG as well. They obviously joined top of the table with Monaco, who had a phenomenal Matchday 1 result, of course, that 2-1 win over 10-man Barcelona. PSG, to me, Rob, look a little bit fresher and a little bit kind of freer at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they got very lucky to win in their opening league phase game because Paulo Gazzaniga, let the ball through his legs, a tame cross, and it gifted them win late on. They were wasteful in front of goal in that game. There was some brilliant Gazzaniga saves. There were some misses. Ladislav Krejci with a brilliant challenge to deny Usman Dembele one-on-one. But they got the job done. That was the crucial thing. And it's worth noting that PSG had a much easier game than Arsenal in theory because Arsenal had to go all the way to the end against Leicester. They played Friday, cruised past a Rennes, brought off all their star players at the moment, which is Bradley Barcola, Dembele, Fabian Ruiz. Barcola's got 6 goals now this season. But the injury list, the last I saw, I think there's a potential for 8 players to be out, Pete. Donnarumma's not been playing. Safanov, the new Russian goalkeeper, has been playing. He did against Girona. Asensio, Desiree Doué, Vitinha, Hernandez, Kimpembe, Ramos all injured. Nuno Mendes was ill on Friday, so we'll see if he's back. So lots of notable injuries and absentees for PSG.
Should be a fascinating game. Tuesday looks like a great batch of fixtures in the Champions League.